The monitor had been flat for nearly 20 minutes. No pulse, no movement, no sign of life. "Time of death," Dr. Ethan Hale began, his voice low, steady, but tired. Then, "Wait!" It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it stopped everything. Nurse Lila Moreno didn't move at first. Her hand hovered just above Amara Collins's wrist, as if she was listening to something no one else could hear. Ethan looked at her. "Lila?" She shook her head slowly. "Something's not right." Around them the room felt heavier. The rhythmic urgency that had filled it minutes earlier had faded into resignation. They had done everything. Everything. And yet, Lila stepped forward. "One more round." A beat of silence. Then another nurse whispered, "We're past protocol." Ethan exhaled slowly. He glanced at the clock. 22 minutes. Too long. Far too long. And still, something in Lila's voice unsettled him. Not panic, not desperation. Certainty. Ethan hesitated only a second longer. "All right," he said quietly. "One more." The defibrillator charged again. The machine hummed. "Clear." Amara's body jolted. The line on the monitor remained still, flat, unmoving. Then, a flicker. So small it could have been missed, but it wasn't. "Hold on," Lila said sharply. Another flicker. Then, a pulse. Weak, fragile, but unmistakably there. The room froze. No one spoke, no one moved, because what they were seeing should not have been happening. What happened next, Ethan would later admit, should not have happened at all. But to understand how they reached that moment, you have to go back to the beginning of the day. Everything changed. That morning had started like any other. Amara Collins stood in her kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Marcus had already left for work. The kids were grown now, gone into lives of their own. And for the first time in years, the silence felt heavier than the noise ever had. She pressed her palms against the counter and closed her eyes. "Just get through the day," she whispered. There had been too many days like this lately. Bills stacking up, school pressures, a quiet, unspoken exhaustion that sleep never seemed to fix. Still, she forced a smile, grabbed her bag and headed out. Because that's what she always did. She kept going. At the school, her students noticed nothing. She laughed with them, helped them, encouraged them. But between moments, she drifted. At one point, she paused mid-sentence, her hand resting against the desk. A strange sensation passed through her chest. Not pain, not exactly, just a pressure. Like something tightening from the inside. "Miss Collins?" a student asked. She blinked. "Sorry," she said quickly. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. Not really. By mid-afternoon, the feeling had grown stronger, subtle but persistent. Still, she ignored it. Because she had responsibilities. Because she didn't have time to fall apart. Because she thought she could push through. And for a while, she did. Until she didn't. The hallway spun, the voices blurred, and the last thing she remembered was the sound of something hitting the floor. The call came at 3:17 p.m. Marcus nearly didn't answer it. Work had been relentless that day, and his phone had already buzzed a dozen times. But something Something made him pick it up. "Hello?" There was a pause, then a voice tight with urgency. "Is this Marcus Collins?" "Yes. What is this about?" "It's your wife. She collapsed at work. Paramedics are with her now." Everything else disappeared. "What? What do you mean, collapsed?" But the voice was already fading behind instructions, background noise, urgency. "Sir, she's not responsive. They're transporting her." Marcus didn't remember grabbing his keys. He didn't remember leaving the building. All he remembered was the drive, the red lights he barely saw, the way his hands shook on the wheel. "Stay with me," he kept whispering, over and over again, as if somehow she could hear him. Inside the ambulance, time moved differently, compressed, urgent, fragile. "Pulse is dropping." "Stay with me, ma'am." "Charging. Clear." Amara's body jolted again. Nothing. "Come on," one paramedic muttered. They had seen this before. They knew where this was heading, but still, they fought. Because sometimes people came back. Not often, but sometimes. "Pulse?" Nothing. The words hung heavy. One of them glanced at the clock, then at the other. Neither said what they were thinking. Not yet. By the time they reached the hospital, they were already losing her. Inside the ER, the room exploded into motion. "Cardiac arrest. Start compressions. Epinephrine, now!" Ethan Hale moved with precision. Years of training, years of experience, but even he could feel it. The slipping, the distance between effort and outcome. Minutes passed, then more. The monitor went flat. No rhythm, no response. Still, they continued. Because stopping meant accepting something none of them were ready to say out loud. 20 minutes, 22, 25, and then silence. "Time of wait," Lila's voice cut through again, and this time it carried something different. Not doubt, not fear, recognition, as if something had just crossed a line. Amara woke 3 days later. The first thing she noticed was the quiet. Not the hospital quiet, something deeper, lingering. Marcus was there, his hand wrapped around hers. When she opened her eyes, he froze. Then, "Amara?" Tears came before words. "You're here," he whispered. She looked at him confused, then distant. "I wasn't supposed to come back," she said softly. The room went still. Days later, when she was stronger, they asked her what she remembered. She hesitated, then spoke slowly. "I was somewhere else." Not a place she could describe, not exactly, but she remembered how it felt. Light, warm, complete. No pain, no fear, just peace. "And then," she said, her voice trembling, "I heard voices." Ethan leaned forward. "Voices?" She nodded. "Yours." The room froze. "You said, we're losing her." Ethan's expression shifted, because he had said that, quietly, to another doctor, moments before they had almost stopped. "How would you know that?" he asked. Amara didn't answer. She just looked at Lila. "You told them to try again," she said. Lila's breath caught. "I remember that."
Silence filled the space between them, because there was no explanation, no medical reasoning, no logical path that made sense. Only one question that lingered long after the machines had quieted. Why? Why her? Why now? Amara would later say she didn't know, only that when she was there, she felt a pull, a choice she didn't fully understand, and then something or someone didn't let her stay.
Some moments in life don't come with explanations, only impact, only change. For Amara Collins, 27 minutes should have been the end. Instead, it became a beginning. A reminder that sometimes, even when everything says it's too late, something unseen may still be at work. If this story moved you, take a moment to like, share, and follow Lanes and Lanterns. And tell us in the comments, have you ever experienced something that couldn't be explained, but changed your life forever?